The baby's cry pierced the silence of the penthouse, sharp and desperate, pulling Julian Hart from the edge of sleep. He bolted upright, heart pounding, the Chicago skyline glittering coldly through his bedroom's glass walls. His daughter, Lily, was alone in her nursery, or so he thought. Julian, CEO of Hart Tech, was no stranger to control. At 36, he'd built a tech empire from nothing, his name synonymous with innovation and unyielding ambition. But fatherhood? That was a frontier he'd barely navigated since adopting Lily 6 months ago, a decision born from a longing to fill the void his wealth couldn't touch. Barefoot, he raced down the hall, the marble floor icy against his feet, the cry growing louder. He pushed open the nursery door and froze. A stranger stood there, cradling Lily. The man was broad-shouldered, his leather jacket scuffed, his dark curls falling into eyes that held a quiet intensity. He rocked Lily gently, her cries softening to whimpers as he hummed a low, unfamiliar tune. Julian's breath caught, torn between fury and confusion. "Who the hell are you?" he demanded, voice low to avoid startling Lily. The man looked up, unfazed, his hazel eyes locking with Julian's. "I'm Elias. I heard her crying from the hallway." Door was unlocked. His voice was calm, almost too calm, with a faint southern drawl that didn't belong in Chicago's polished high-rises. Hallway. Julian's mind raced. His penthouse was on the 87th floor, accessible only by private elevator. No one just heard anything. "You're trespassing. Hand her over. Now." Elias didn't move, his gaze steady. Lily nestled against his chest. She was screaming, "Man, you weren't here. I wasn't gonna leave her like that." Julian's fists clenched. Every instinct screamed to call security, but something in Elias's demeanor, the way he held Lily, protective yet gentle, made him hesitate. "Explain yourself, or I'm calling the cops." Elias sighed, glancing down at Lily, now asleep, her tiny hand curled around his finger. "I'm a friend of Mara's," he said. "She gave me a keycard. Said you might need help." Mara, Julian's sister, the only person he trusted with Lily. She'd been in London for a conference, hadn't mentioned anyone named Elias. "Mara didn't tell me about you," Julian said, stepping closer, his voice sharp. "And no one gets a keycard without my approval." Elias raised an eyebrow, unfurling a faint smirk. "Sounds like Mara. Always keeping secrets. Look, I'm not here to cause trouble. I was dropping off some papers for her, heard the kid, and well, here we are." Julian's eyes narrowed. Papers? At midnight. The story didn't add up, but Lily's peaceful breathing held him back from escalating. He reached out, and Elias carefully passed Lily over, their hands brushing for a split second. Elias's skin was warm, calloused, a stark contrast to Julian's manicured hands. "Get out," Julian said, cradling Lily close, her warmth grounding him. "And leave the keycard." Elias pulled a sleek black card from his pocket, placing it on the changing table. "You should lock your doors, Mr. Hart. Not everyone's as harmless as me." He turned to leave, then paused, glancing back. "She's a sweet kid. You're lucky." Julian didn't respond, his pulse still racing as Elias slipped out of the nursery. He checked Lily, her chest rising and falling steadily, then grabbed his phone to call Mara. It went to voicemail. "Mara, who the hell is Elias?" he hissed into the message. "Call me back. Now." He sank into the rocking chair, Lily in his arms, trying to piece together the encounter. Elias's ease with Lily, his cryptic connection to Mara, the keycard. It all felt like a puzzle with missing pieces. Julian prided himself on reading people, a skill honed in boardrooms and negotiations, but Elias was unreadable. And that smirk, that fleeting touch, it lingered in Julian's mind longer than it should have. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the penthouse, casting long shadows across the sleek furniture. Julian sat at his glass dining table, coffee untouched, scrolling through security footage. The cameras showed Elias entering the elevator at 11:47 p.m., keycard in hand. No hesitation. He'd lied about hearing Lily from the hallway. The elevator opened directly into the penthouse. Julian's jaw tightened. Mara still hadn't called back. His phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "Check your mailbox. Mara left something for you." Julian's grip tightened on the phone. Elias. How did he have his number? He stormed to the mailbox in the lobby, finding a manila envelope with Mara's handwriting. For Julian. Urgent. Inside was a USB drive and a note. Watch this if you want answers about Lily. Heart pounding, Julian plugged the USB into his laptop. A video loaded. Mara, looking tired, her blonde hair pulled back. Julian, if you're watching this, I'm sorry, she began. There's something about Lily's adoption you need to know. I didn't tell you everything because I was trying to protect you. Elias, he's tied to her past. He's not just a friend. He's her uncle. Julian's world tilted. Uncle? Lily's adoption had been closed, the record sealed. Mara had handled the legal side, assuring him it was straightforward. He replayed the video, Mara's words sinking in. Elias had been there the night Lily's biological mother died. He'd walked away from the adoption, too broken to fight for her, until now. The nursery door creaked. Julian spun around, half expecting Elias again, but it was just the nanny, Rosa, arriving for her shift. Everything okay, Mr. Hart? She asked, eyeing his pale face. No, Julian muttered, closing the laptop. Not even close. He needed answers, and Elias was the key. But finding him meant confronting a truth Julian wasn't sure he was ready for. A truth that could unravel everything he'd built, including the fragile bond he was forming with Lily. Julian's office at Hart Tech was a fortress of glass and steel, a testament to his control over Chicago's tech scene. But today, as he stared at the city skyline, his mind was anywhere but on the quarterly reports piling up on his desk. Mara's video played on a loop in his head. Elias is her uncle. The words felt like a betrayal, a crack in the foundation of his carefully constructed life. He'd spent the morning digging into Elias Kane. A quick call to his private investigator revealed sparse details. Elias, 32, was a freelance photographer with no fixed address, bouncing between Chicago, Nashville, and small towns in between. No criminal record, no social media footprint, just a few grainy photos from local art galleries showcasing his work, moody landscapes, raw portraits, nothing that screamed threat. Yet Julian couldn't shake the image of Elias holding Lily, the ease in his movements, the weight of his gaze. His phone buzzed. Another text from Elias. Meet me at the Bean, 2 p.m. We need to talk about Lily. No pleasantries, no explanation. Julian's first instinct was to ignore it, to call his lawyer and bury this mess in legal red tape. But curiosity, and something deeper, a nagging pull he couldn't name, made him grab his coat. Cloud Gate, nicknamed the Bean, gleamed under the autumn sun in Millennium Park. Tourists snapped selfies, their laughter clashing with the storm in Julian's chest. He spotted Elias leaning against a railing, a camera slung around his neck, his leather jacket replaced by a faded green sweater. He looked out of place among the polished crowd, yet utterly at ease. You've got 5 minutes, Julian said, approaching, his voice clipped. Start talking. Elias turned, his hazel eyes catching the light. No pleasantries? Fine. Lily's mom, Sarah, was my sister. I didn't know about the adoption until it was done. Mara kept me in the dark. Julian's jaw tightened. You expect me to believe you just happened to show up last night? With a keycard? Mara gave it to me months ago, Elias said, his tone steady. She knew I was looking for Sarah's kid. I didn't know it was Lily until I saw her. He pulled a photo from his pocket. A young woman with Lily's wide eyes, laughing in a sunlit field. This was Sarah. She died 2 years ago. Overdose. The word hit Julian like a punch. He'd known Lily's mother had struggled, but the details were vague, buried in adoption paperwork. Why didn't you take her? He asked, voice quieter now. Elias's face darkened. I was a mess back then, barely keeping myself together. Sarah made me promise to stay away if anything happened to her. She didn't want Lily raised by someone who couldn't get it right. He looked away, jaw tight. I thought I was honoring her wish. Julian studied him, searching for a lie, but Elias's pain was raw, unguarded. So why now, he pressed. Why show up in my home? Because I saw you, Elias said, meeting his gaze. On the news, with Lily, at some gala. You looked lost, like you were trying to figure out how to love her. I know that feeling. Julian flinched. He'd spent months shielding his vulnerabilities, projecting strength to the world. Yet this stranger had seen through him in a single glance. "You don't know me," he said, but the words lacked conviction. "I don't," Elias admitted. "But I know Lily's part of me too. I'm not here to take her. I just want to be in her life, however you'll let me." The sincerity in his voice disarmed Julian, but trust was a luxury he couldn't afford. "You broke into my home. You don't get to make demands." Elias nodded, unperturbed. "Fair. But you're not the only one protecting her. Sarah was my family. That makes Lily mine, too." The air between them crackled, a mix of defiance and something unspoken. Julian's phone buzzed. Rosa, checking in about Lily's nap. He used the distraction to step back, needing distance from Elias's intensity. "I'll think about it," he said finally. "But you stay away until I say otherwise." Elias held up his hands, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "Your call, Mr. Hart." He turned, blending into the crowd, leaving Julian with the photo of Sarah still clutched in his hand. Back at the penthouse, Julian sat in Lily's nursery, the photo on the table beside him. Lily babbled in her crib, her tiny hands reaching for a stuffed elephant. He traced Sarah's face in the photo, seeing Lily in her smile. The weight of Elias's words settled over him. Family, loss, promises broken and kept. He'd built Heart Tech to control his world, but Lily, and now Elias, were variables he couldn't predict. He called Mara again, this time leaving a sharper voicemail. "You lied about Lily's adoption. You let a stranger into our lives. Fix this, Mara, or I will." But as he hung up, he knew the truth was more complicated. Elias wasn't just a stranger. He was a link to Lily's past, and maybe, just maybe, to a future Julian hadn't dared imagine. The Chicago wind howled outside Julian's penthouse, rattling the windows as he stared at the photo of Sarah. Lily slept soundly in her crib, unaware of the storm brewing in her father's heart. Elias's claim, "Lily's my family," echoed like a challenge, daring Julian to rethink everything he thought he knew about fatherhood. He hadn't slept. Instead, he'd spent the night digging deeper, cross-referencing adoption records and Mara's vague emails from the agency. The paperwork was clean, too clean, with gaps where Sarah's family history should have been. Mara had orchestrated it all, and now her silence was deafening. Julian's anger simmered, but beneath it was fear. Fear that Elias's presence could disrupt the fragile bond he was building with Lily. By noon, Mara finally called. "Julian, I'm sorry," she said, her voice strained. "I'm landing in Chicago tonight. We'll talk in person." "You hid Lily's uncle from me," Julian snapped, pacing the nursery. "You let him into my home. What else aren't you telling me?" "It's complicated," Mara said. "Elias wasn't supposed to find out about the adoption. Sarah made me promise." "Sarah's dead," Julian cut in. "You don't get to hide behind her anymore. Be here by 8, or I'm done trusting you." He hung up, his hands shaking. Mara had been his rock since their parents died, the one person he leaned on. Her secrecy felt like a blade. Needing air, Julian bundled Lily into her stroller and headed to Lincoln Park. The autumn leaves crunched underfoot, and Lily giggled, waving at passing dogs. For a moment, Julian let himself breathe, her joy a tether to sanity. But then he saw him, Elias, sitting on a bench, camera in hand, snapping shots of the lake. "You following me now?" Julian called, his tone sharp but his heart unsteady. Elias lowered the camera, surprise flickering across his face. "Didn't expect to see you here. Just shooting the scenery." He nodded at Lily. "She looks happy." Julian tightened his grip on the stroller. "Don't act like you know her." "I don't," Elias said, standing, his voice gentle. "But I want to. I'm not your enemy, Julian." The use of his first name caught Julian off guard, softening the edge of his anger. He studied Elias, the worn boots, the camera that looked older than both of them, the quiet sincerity in his eyes. "Why didn't you fight for her?" Julian asked, the question slipping out before he could stop it. Elias's gaze dropped to the ground. "I was in a dark place when Sarah died. Couldn't even take care of myself, let alone a kid. By the time I got my head straight, Mara said Lily was with you. Someone who could give her everything. I thought I was doing right by her." Julian wanted to argue, to call it a cop-out, but the rawness in Elias's voice stopped him. And now, he asked. Now I see her, and I see Sarah, Elias said, his voice breaking slightly. I can't walk away again. The words hung between them, heavy with unspoken promises. Julian's chest tightened, not just from Elias's claim, but from the way his presence stirred something long buried. Attraction, maybe, or just the pull of someone who understood loss. Julian pushed the thought away. This wasn't about him. It was about Lily. Come to the penthouse tonight, Julian said, surprising himself. Mara's back. We're settling this. Elias nodded, a flicker of gratitude in his eyes. I'll be there. That evening, Mara arrived, her usual confidence frayed. She hugged Julian tightly, then froze when she saw Elias in the living room, his camera bag slung over the couch. You didn't tell me he'd be here, she whispered to Julian. You didn't tell me a lot of things, Julian shot back. Sit. Both of you. The air was thick with tension as they faced each other, Lily asleep upstairs with Rosa. Mara spoke first, her voice low. Sarah was my friend, Elias. She begged me to keep Lily safe, away from her past. I honored that. By cutting me out. Elias leaned forward, his hands clasped tightly. I was her brother. I deserved to know. You were a wreck, Mara said, her voice rising. You think Sarah wanted Lily around that? Julian held up a hand, silencing them. Enough. Mara, you lied to me. Elias, you broke into my home. Neither of you gets to play the victim. He turned to Mara. What else don't I know about Lily's adoption? Mara hesitated, then sighed. Sarah's family wasn't stable. Addiction, debt, you name it. I pushed the adoption through quickly to protect Lily. Elias wasn't supposed to find out, but he kept digging. Julian's eyes flicked to Elias, who nodded. I tracked Mara down last year. She gave me the key card to check on Lily, but only if I stayed out of your life. I broke that promise. The room fell silent. Julian's mind churned, piecing together the fragmented truth. Mara's protectiveness, Elias's desperation. They both loved Lily in their own flawed ways. But where did that leave him? I need time, Julian said finally. Lily's my daughter. I decide what's best for her. As Mara and Elias left, their footsteps echoing in the hall, Julian stood alone, the weight of his decision pressing down. He glanced at a photo of Lily on the mantel, her smile a beacon in the chaos. Whatever came next, he'd protect her, no matter the cost. Julian stood in Lily's nursery, watching her sleep, her tiny chest rising and falling under a soft blanket. The confrontation with Mara and Elias had left him raw, his trust in his sister fractured, his thoughts tangled around Elias's quiet intensity. He'd built his life on certainty, contracts, code, calculated risks, but Lily and Elias were rewriting the rules. The next morning, Julian buried himself in work, hoping the rhythm of Hearteka's chaos would drown out his unease. Meetings blurred together, but his mind kept drifting to Elias's hazel eyes, the way they softened when he spoke of Sarah. It wasn't just about Lily. Something about Elias felt like a mirror, reflecting parts of Julian he'd long ignored. Loneliness, longing, the ache for connection beyond his empire. His assistant, Priya, knocked on his office door. Mr. Hart, someone left this for you at reception. She handed him a small package, unmarked except for a sticky note. For Lily. Inside was a hand-stitched teddy bear, its fur soft and slightly uneven, clearly handmade. A note tucked inside read, Sarah made this for her. Thought she should have it. Julian's throat tightened. He turned the bear over, imagining Sarah's hand stitching it, her hopes for a daughter she'd never raise. He texted Elias, meet me at the penthouse. 7 p.m. Bring answers, not gifts. Elias arrived on time, his camera absent, his expression guarded. You got the bear, he said, stepping inside. Julian held it up. You think this makes up for lying about the keycard? For showing up in my life like some ghost? It's not about making up, Elias said, his voice steady. It's about Lily having something from her mom. I don't expect you to trust me. Then why are you here? Julian asked, his frustration spilling over. What do you want from us? Elias hesitated, his eyes searching Julian's. I want to know her. I want to tell her about Sarah someday. Her laugh, her stubbornness, the way she loved fiercely even when it hurt her. I don't have a plan, Julian. I can't lose her again. The vulnerability in his words hit Julian hard. He'd spent years guarding his heart, his relationships fleeting, his focus on success. But Elias's raw honesty cracked something open. "You don't get to just walk in and claim her," Julian said, softer now. "I'm her father." "I know," Elias said. "I'm not trying to take that from you. I just want a piece of her, too." They stood in silence, the tension shifting into something heavier, charged. Julian noticed the way Elias's hands fidgeted, the faint scar above his eyebrow, the way his presence filled the room without trying. He pushed the thought away, focusing on Lily. "I'll consider supervised visits," he said finally. "But I need to know everything about Sarah's family. No more surprises." Elias nodded, relief flickering in his eyes. "I'll tell you whatever you want to know. Sarah's life, her mistakes, mine, all of it." Over the next hour, Elias painted a picture of Sarah's world. A chaotic childhood in rural Tennessee, their parents' addiction, Sarah's own spiral into drugs after a bad breakup. Elias had tried to save her, but she pushed him away, pregnant and scared. She wanted Lily to have a better life, he said. That's why she chose adoption. Julian listened, his anger at Mara softening as he understood her secrecy. She'd been protecting Lily from a past that could have swallowed her. But Elias wasn't that past. He was trying to be something more. As Elias left, he paused at the door. "You're doing right by her, Julian. Sarah would have liked you." The words lingered, warm and unsettling, as Julian returned to Lily's nursery. He placed the teddy bear beside her, its stitches a fragile link to a woman he'd never meet. His phone buzzed, a security alert. Someone had accessed the elevator logs again. Not Elias this time, but Mara. She'd been digging into the same records Julian had checked, covering her tracks. His trust in her wavered further. What else was she hiding? He texted her, "We need to talk. No more lies." Then he looked at Lily, her peaceful face a reminder of why he couldn't let this go. Elias was a risk, but so was Mara's secrecy. Julian needed the truth, not just for Lily, but for himself, to understand the pull he felt toward Elias, and whether it was a danger or a lifeline. Julian's penthouse felt like a pressure cooker, every glance at Lily's teddy bear igniting a mix of gratitude and suspicion. Mara's latest move, accessing the elevator logs, had pushed him to the edge. He needed answers, not just about Elias, but about the gaps in Lily's adoption that Mara seemed determined to bury. He arranged a meeting with Mara at a quiet cafe in Wicker Park, away from the penthouse's charged atmosphere. Lily stayed with Rosa, and Julian arrived early, his nerves frayed. Mara slid into the booth across from him, her eyes shadowed from jet lag. "You look like hell," she said, attempting a smile. "Save it," Julian said, his voice low. "You accessed the elevator logs." "What?" Mara's smile faded. "I was checking on Elias. I didn't trust him to stay away." "You don't get to play gatekeeper anymore," Julian said, leaning forward. "You hid Lily's uncle from me. You hid Sarah's past. What else?" Mara's hands twisted in her lap. "I was protecting you, Julian. You wanted a family, a clean start. Sarah's world was messy, addiction, debt, a brother who couldn't stay sober long enough to help her. I didn't want that touching Lily." "Elias says he's clean now," Julian countered. "He's not asking for custody, just a connection." "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I didn't trust him." Mara snapped, then softened. "Julian, you're my brother. I saw how much you wanted Lily. I didn't want some ghost from her past ruining that." Julian's chest ached. Mara had always been his shield, but her protectiveness had crossed a line. "You don't get to decide what I can handle," he said. "Lily's my daughter. I need the truth, all of it." Mara nodded, tears brimming. "There's a letter," she said quietly. "From Sarah? I kept it from you because it mentioned Elias. She wanted him to have a chance with Lily, but only if he was stable. I didn't think he was." "Where's the letter?" Julian demanded. "At my apartment. I'll get it to you tomorrow." Julian left the cafe unsettled, Mara's words clashing with Elias's sincerity. He needed to see Elias again, to test his story against Mara's. He texted him, "Meet me at the park again. Noon." Elias was there, camera in hand, capturing kids chasing pigeons. He smiled when he saw Julian, a warmth that caught Julian off guard. "No stroller today?" Elias asked. "Rosa's got her," Julian said, sitting beside him. "Mara told me about Sarah's letter." "You knew about it?" Elias's smile faded. Yeah, Sarah wrote it before she died. Said if I got my act together, I should find Lily. Mara promised to give it to you, but he shrugged. Guess she didn't trust me. Julian studied him, searching for cracks in his story. Why should I trust you now? You shouldn't, Elias said bluntly. Not yet. But I'm here, aren't I? I'm trying. The honesty disarmed Julian, stirring that same pull he'd felt before. He noticed the way Elias's fingers traced the camera lens, the quiet strength in his posture. I'm letting you see Lily, Julian said, the words surprising him. Supervised at my place. One chance. Elias's eyes lit up, a mix of hope and gratitude. Thank you, Julian. I won't screw this up. That evening, Elias arrived at the penthouse, a small photo album in hand. Lily was awake, babbling in her playpen. Elias knelt beside her, showing her pictures of Sarah, laughing in a park, painting a mural, holding a newborn Lily. That's your mom, he whispered, his voice thick. Julian watched from the doorway, his heart twisting. Elias's tenderness with Lily was undeniable, but so was the spark Julian felt watching him. He pushed it down, focusing on Lily's giggles. This was about her, not him. But as Elias left, he brushed past Julian, their shoulders touching. You're a good dad, Elias said softly. Lily's lucky. The words stayed with Julian long after the door closed, mingling with the growing realization that Elias wasn't just a link to Lily's past. He was becoming part of Julian's present, whether he was ready for it or not. Julian stood at his penthouse window, the Chicago skyline a blur as he held Sarah's letter, delivered by Mara that morning. The paper was worn, the ink smudged, but Sarah's words were clear. If Elias finds his way back, let him love Lily. He's her family, too. Julian's chest tightened, torn between Sarah's plea and his own instincts to protect his daughter. Elias's visits had become a quiet routine, short, supervised moments filled with stories of Sarah and gentle play with Lily. Each one chipped away at Julian's defenses, but the letter felt like a final push, urging him to trust. He invited Elias over that evening, the letter in his pocket. Lily was fussy, teething, and Julian was exhausted from a brutal day at Heart Tech. When Elias arrived, he took one look at Lily's red cheeks and scooped her up, rocking her with a practiced ease that made Julian's heart ache. You're good with her, Julian said, almost reluctantly. Had a lot of practice with Sarah's tantrums, Elias said, smiling faintly. She was a handful as a kid. Julian handed him the letter. Mara gave me this. Sarah wrote it for you. Elias's hands stilled as he read, his expression shifting from surprise to quiet grief. She believed in me, he whispered, even when I didn't. He looked at Julian, eyes glistening. Thank you for this. The moment felt fragile, intimate, and Julian's pulse quickened. He cleared his throat, stepping back. I'm letting you see her more, he said. Unsupervised, eventually. But I need to know you're in this for the long haul. I am, Elias said, his voice firm. I swear it. Over the next week, Elias became a fixture in Lily's life. He brought her tiny gifts, a wooden rattle, a photo of Sarah to hang in her nursery, and shared stories that painted a vivid picture of her mother. Julian watched, torn between gratitude and a growing awareness of Elias's pull. Their conversations stretched beyond Lily, touching on music, art, the weight of their pasts. Elias spoke of leaving Tennessee to escape his parents' shadow, while Julian admitted to the loneliness of his success, the relationships he'd let slip away. One night, after Lily was asleep, Elias lingered, helping Julian tidy the nursery. Their hands brushed as they reached for the same toy, and Julian froze, the contact sparking something he'd tried to ignore. Elias didn't pull away, his gaze steady, searching. You feel it, too, don't you? He said softly. Julian's breath caught. He'd spent years avoiding this. Vulnerability, desire, anything that could distract from his empire or Lily. But Elias's presence was undeniable, a warmth that filled the penthouse's sterile edges. I can't, Julian said, stepping back. Not with Lily in the middle. Elias nodded, no judgment in his eyes. I get it, but I'm not going anywhere. The words lingered, a promise and a challenge. Julian threw himself into work, trying to drown out the tension, but Elias's visits kept pulling him back. One afternoon, while Elias played with Lily in the park, Julian's phone buzzed. A call from his investigator. Found something on Elias, the man said. He's been clean for years, but there's a debt. Old one, tied to Sarah's medical bills. He's been paying it off, barely scraping by. Julian's stomach twisted. Elias had never mentioned money, never hinted at needing help. Was it pride, or something else? He confronted Elias that evening, the park's autumn leaves swirling around them. Why didn't you tell me about the debt? Julian asked, his voice sharper than intended. Elias's jaw tightened. It's my burden, not yours. I didn't want you thinking I was after your money. You think I'd assume that? Julian shot back, hurt by the implication. You're a billionaire, Julian. People like me don't get the benefit of the doubt. The truth stung, but so did Elias's refusal to lean on him. I want to help, Julian said, softer now. For Lily. For whatever this is. Elias's eyes softened, a flicker of hope breaking through. You don't owe me anything. Maybe I want to, Julian admitted, the words slipping out before he could stop them. The air between them shifted, charged with possibility. Julian didn't know if he was ready, but for the first time, he wanted to find out. The Chicago winter crept in, dusting the penthouse windows with frost as Julian navigated the new rhythm of his life. Elias's visits were no longer just about Lily. They were about stolen glances, quiet conversations, and a warmth that unsettled Julian as much as it grounded him. He'd paid off Elias's debt anonymously, through a lawyer, hoping to ease his burden without crossing a line. But Elias knew, and the gratitude in his eyes during their next visit made Julian's heart race. One evening, as snow fell outside, Elias stayed late, helping Julian decorate Lily's nursery for Christmas. They strung fairy lights, their laughter mingling with Lily's babbling. When their hands brushed again, Julian didn't pull away. Elias's gaze held his, steady and warm. You're making this hard, Elias said, his voice low. Making what hard? Julian asked, though he knew. Keeping my distance, Elias said, stepping closer. I didn't come here for this, Julian. But I can't stop thinking about you. Julian's breath hitched. He'd built walls around his heart, but Elias was dismantling them, piece by piece. Lily comes first, Julian said, more to himself than Elias. Always, Elias agreed. But what about you? What do you want? The question hung in the air, raw and unguarded. Julian wanted to run, to retreat to the safety of his controlled world, but Elias's presence anchored him. He leaned in, their lips meeting in a tentative kiss that deepened into something fierce, desperate. When they pulled apart, Julian's heart pounded, his world tilted. I don't know how to do this, Julian admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. Me neither, Elias said, his smile soft. But we'll figure it out. Over the next month, their connection grew, cautious but undeniable. Elias moved to Chicago permanently, taking a job at a local gallery, his visits with Lily blending into quiet evenings with Julian. Mara, still rebuilding trust, watched with wary approval, her own guilt softening as she saw Lily thrive. But the past wasn't done with them. One morning, Julian received a call from the adoption agency. A distant relative of Sarah's, a cousin, had surfaced, questioning the adoption's legality. The claim was weak, but it shook Julian, reminding him how fragile his family was. He told Elias that night, expecting panic, but Elias was calm. We'll fight it, he said. Together. The word, together, settled over Julian like a promise. They hired a lawyer, combed through records, and faced the challenge head-on. The cousin's claim was dismissed, but the process bonded them, their shared love for Lily forging something stronger. On Lily's first birthday, Julian hosted a small party in the penthouse. Mara was there, her smile genuine for the first time in months. Elias knelt beside Lily, helping her smash a tiny cake, his laughter echoing. Julian watched, his heart full. He'd spent years chasing success, but this, Lily's giggles, Elias's warmth, a family built from broken pieces, was what he'd been searching for. Later, as guests left and Lily slept, Elias pulled Julian close. You changed my life, he said, his voice thick with emotion. You and Lily. Julian kissed him, slow and sure. You changed mine too. They stood together, the city glittering below, their future uncertain but bright. Julian had uncovered a secret that upended his world, but it led him to something greater: love, trust, and a family he'd never expected. For Lily, for Elias, and for himself, he was ready to embrace it all.